1 in 11 people worldwide faced hunger in 2023, 1 in 5 in Africa. In the contemporary, hunger is framed within a biological scope, but rhetoric can reshape how hunger can be understood. In 2023, around 2.33 billion people globally faced moderate or severe food insecurity, a number that has not been changed significantly since the sharp upturn in 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Food rhetoric is a wide-ranging genre that looks at many things involving and revolving around the discourse of food. Today, I'm going to show the way hunger is present in the field of food rhetoric. This is No Food for Thought, a podcast on hunger and food rhetoric, episode 1. Felt the cool rain on my shoulder. In episode 1, we will be starting with the 2012 chapter by Jean Retzinger titled Empty Bellies, Empty Calories. It is in the book The Rhetoric of Food Discourse, Materiality, and Power. I am starting with this chapter because it sets the stage for the rhetorical analysis. Retzinger uses a few different articles and kind of does a literature review to do her own rhetorical analysis. And the first article she uses talks about the empowerment of gays in photography. She uses this article because of its key quote, "The act of looking is commonly thought of as awarding more power to the person who is looking than to the person who is the object of the look." Photography thus functions in various degrees to represent codes of dominance and subjugation. Now, this is important because she uses this information to show how the often photographed, to a point of being a stereotype, images of children in Africa starving impose a subconscious rhetorical process. Retzinger goes on to do another literature review of Jan Pieterse, in which she talks about how the African relief aids commit victimized appeals of the children, which have created a level of power for the rest of the world. It creates a thought process where we can see those images and we do think, that's awful, that's terrible, but we also think, well, that's just how things are over there. And it negates the reality that those people are people. And those people who do have joy and are struggling, and instead it invents a narrative of those people in those countries who are poor and dying of hunger, and that is how life is over there. And once you really start to think about how true this is, it's really dystopian. But I can see where I've done it throughout my entire life. And this false reality of a large gap reinforces the complacency of the West and displaces true human solidarity. Rhetorically, hunger is being used here to empower the West. And it is not like the people from the United States are evil and we've been acting this way necessarily willingly, but it's more, she uses the term compassion fatigue and throws it around throughout the article. And her definition is, it is an apathy provoked by overexposure to images of suffering in the media. Now, I see this as hunger being one and the same with suffering. So, the rhetoric of hunger is also subconscious, and then the suffering and hunger have kind of been usurped into the fold of capitalism. And hunger has worked rhetorically to pass these third world people who are starving as unsavable because of the compassion fatigue that we've seen throughout our entire lives. Now, I know it is a bold statement to say that hunger has been usurped into the fold of capitalism, but it's no coincidence that rhetoric has been used to deploy this compassion fatigue to us at the same time that food has become more and more of a commodity. As Irvin Jacobson states in his article, The Rhetoric of Food, Food as Nature, Commodity, and Culture. Today, in Western societies, realtors tend to control the market access of food. This has given them a strategic position of control and power, whereby they seek to transform the distribution system and the commodities themselves for their own purposes. Capitalism has turned hunger into a commodity through rhetoric. Large companies used starving children to create pathos imagery that made the idea to create surpluses of food a necessity. The international trade regime resulting from the Uruguay Round, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, is based upon the traditional principle of non-discrimination, and these institutions are for the moment actively trying to impose a neoliberal understanding of economics and trade on the world, thereby defining food as a commodity that can and should be traded globally. They can affect this agenda by means of economic incentives and political instruments, and thereby more or less force reluctant governments to apply a universalistic understanding of food as a globally exchangeable commodity. So, so what Jacobson and Redzinger, how this all ties in and correlates together. If they force food to become a commodity when it should be a necessity, and all of these companies are preaching that these people in Africa need food, if it's been globalized, why are there places in countries where it's been globalized, why are people going hungry? It's a rhetorical question. But the other thing that raises concern is that if the food has become globalized and there is people going hungry, what are these African relief aids really doing? Because I will say what they're partially doing, while they are giving people food in Africa and clothes who do need it, if they consistently just keep shipping in food and clothes, the people there who make the food and who make the clothes, they can't have a sustainable economy because they can't start their economy. They can't start, selling their clothes and food because it's just getting shipped in. So what does that do? That takes out the small economy system, the small sustainable economy system in place, and allows for the globalization system to remain intact. Rhetorical here, I mean, it's rhetorical fallacies, it's rhetorical inequality. Really, like, you could really tie in, like, the rhetoric of inequality and injustice and poverty into this, but that's kind of not something I'm going to do. I'm not trying to sound hippy dippy here. You can see the Pink Floyd poster in the background, actually. You can't see all the Grateful Dead ones, though. Shoop. I'm not trying to sound like some anti-corporate communist hippy dippy person here, but that is the system in place. It has been globalized, and if it's being globalized and it's turned into a commodity, if it's going to be globalized, every person should be able to have food, but they don't because it's been turned into a commodity, and it's become to, if you have access to food, doesn't have access to third world countries. They don't get the access. The food that gets made by poor farmers in third world Latin American countries gets shipped to America, and they barely have food to eat, and they've been harvesting food all day long, and they go hungry. That's where the rhetoric is. The rhetoric is in the inequalities and the problems with these big economy systems set in place, or the corporate systems set in place. Both of them, really. So that is No Food for Thought, a podcast on the rhetoric of hunger, episode 1 in the books.